So today I'm joined by the inspirational Tom Vaughton, founder and CEO of Varn, a leading SEO and search marketing agency. Tom's passion goes far beyond search and digital strategies. He believes that curiosity, creativity, and connection with nature lead to better thinking and stronger teams. That belief inspired him to create Varn's unique woodland office, an innovative outdoor workspace for his team. From there, Tom launched VarnFest and VarnFest Future Leaders, which are unique woodland business festivals that bring people together to share leadership journeys, creativity, and inspiration, all in the great outdoors. So, welcome to Pieces of Choice, Tom.
Thank you, Natasha. Great to see you again.
So, you're actually in your woodland office today, aren't you?
Yep. Slightly fresh, but lovely and sunny.
Yeah, and not sitting outside because it is quite chilly still. Do you actually work outside sometimes then? I'm guessing you must do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when it's warm enough, it's amazing because you just sit there, you can work anywhere, really. You've got a second screen and a laptop and a keyboard. You just plug it in and off you go.
Well, so every now and again, I end up in the forest or in some sort of country park thinking, I know, I'll go and work here. Every single time I do that, of course, I just don't have enough broadband. So you guys must have some like fibre plumbed into the woodland or something.
Yeah, yes, essentially. One of the aims was we're not just doing it for fun, but we've got to be a business that runs efficiently and well. So having good internet was key. So we started with Starlink, which is like a satellite, which was great actually. But then we managed to run a really long fibre line to the woods. So that's really key because you can't do it half-heartedly, really.
No, well, I mean, that sounds like that would have been a big investment just to start with, just getting your broadband up and running in the forest.
I mean, I can tell you the story of how we got there. It did cost more than we thought, but interestingly, the learning is it turned out to be more of an investment than a cost, is what I would say.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And how many people do you have working in the office there with you?
It can be up to 25. It's normally not everyone's in because people have got meetings. So it's probably normally about, I don't know, 10, 15, something like that, because people are out and about or come and go and that sort of thing.
And before we get into, we want to talk about the woodland, we want to talk about your purpose and passions. But just out of interest, what do you actually do? Like we had a brief conversation about it's not search engine optimization anymore, it's just search. So like explain.
Our aim as a company is really to work with businesses to help their content, their brand, their website to perform better online. So it's showing up where people are looking, which obviously traditionally, I say traditionally, it sounds mad to say traditionally when talking about search engines, but traditionally was on Google, maybe Bing, if anyone's ever heard of that. But now because of AI and people having conversations almost with AI, also show up in those answers and be cited as the reference. So that's why we sort of call it search marketing, I guess, rather than search engine optimization of marketing, just because it's evolved, but it's fundamentally very similar.
Well, so I saw a post yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It was an Instagram reel, and she'd called it "I'm so embarrassed." And what she was saying was, I've made £145 million in revenue over the last few years, doing talks and global travel, consulting, etc., etc. But it sounded like her work's dried up. And she said, I've realised I need to learn how to use social media in order to continue my business on. And whether that was just bloody brilliant marketing and a way for her to say, hi, here I am, and that's gone viral, I thought, yeah, actually, I think I've experienced something similar with my business where I never really had to go and find work. It just sort of came to me, generally through referrals. For the very first time in my self-employed life of like 9 years, just over the last few months, I've been thinking, oh God, I really do need to learn how to do this social media stuff and learn how to be found. Do you think that's a fair assessment of how things are moving in a world of marketing? You have to get good at this social search stuff.
Like I say, I'd be interested to know what that person on Instagram did before. I think there's certainly a truth, and I've seen it as more prevalent in the past, where if you had a really good search strategy, like search engine strategy, just focus on search engines, you could do really well. but arguably you were slightly cutting corners because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So you did get a lot of people that got a lot of business, whether it be lead gen or e-commerce, from doing really good SEO or just cutting corners and slightly cheating. But either way, getting a lot of traffic and sales through it. And I guess now that basket has widened, and actually I think it almost goes back to really good marketing and brand awareness, which is why it's great you're doing the podcast, but delivered in a technically correct way for social media and for search and for AI. There was definitely a window where you could just do SEO and that would drive enough leads. I think that is probably going to change a bit.
Well, actually, I know we weren't going to be doing a podcast on marketing, but I just need to continue. I just need to continue on in this
Yeah,
vein.
God.
I studied marketing as part of my business. And I can remember them saying at the time, only 50% of marketing works, but you never really know what 50% it is. And part of the magic is figuring out how to actually make it work. But it does strike me that a lot of marketing these days just doesn't really get the desired results. Like, do you see that? Or
It's a great question. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that 50% stat because I was going to quote that, asking about that Instagram post, because probably 50% of social media posts aren't true. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it depends why you're doing it. There's certainly an element of marketing where you need to test and expect to fail. And there's elements of it where you can look better than you are at it just because you're in the right place at the right time. I
right.
mean, certainly from a search market perspective, I used to run a web shop that I set up probably in 2002 or something, back in the early days, and I did amazingly out of it. But I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I was just an early adopter. And as soon as like Amazon and some of the big players came along, I was soon knocked off my perch because I just got complacent, if I'm honest. So I think there's certainly where you need to keep evolving, and just if you found something that winning, you can't just keep doing it. There's also part of marketing. Yeah, we're noticing a lot with clients now where a lot of our strategies we're trying to link back to business metrics like KPIs, and actually CFOs, finance people are more involved in the pitch than they used to be. So I think there's definitely, you're right. People are aware that they're almost too scared of missing the new thing. So they put money on it, but it doesn't turn out to work for them. So I think, yeah, you can definitely waste money. There's a fine line between wasting and testing. And that might come back to how people don't spend enough time either, I think, and we don't either, to be honest, recording where their leads come from and why and how and what were the touch points, because it is quite time consuming and you're normally too busy trying to either do the work or do the proposal. But actually, if it's higher value, especially B2B or lead gen, trying to find out how they heard about you, what were the touch points, what was
Yeah.
the value, how long it took, is really key. But it's amazing how many people don't do it in enough detail. And then when there is a dip, it's hard to know what that dip was or what the competitors have done, because it might be one of your competitors, I don't know who say your main competitors are, have relaunched their website,
Yeah.
or and that's just pushed you slightly to the side. Some of what we do is competitor monitoring, to sort of understand what they're doing and when changes are coming. But I'm probably us, we've looked really good, but it's only because a competitor's done something really daft on their website.
Way. Yeah, that's brilliant.
So yeah, I think there is a chunk of it. I would just look at it rather than wastage. I was looking at it as testing and what can you learn from it and do differently.
Do we still call it testing if none of it works?
Well, I suppose, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I guess, have you done it in a way where you can learn from it and what are you tracking? So I guess, if you don't go into it as a test, then probably you can't call it a test. If you've just tried it and none of it's worked, it's more scattergun, for sure. I think there definitely needs to be some benchmarks or KPIs or some sort of metrics that you're measuring against, which might not actually be inquiries. It might just be sign-ups to your newsletter, for example. I mean, I find that sort of old school, almost, again, seems weird to say, old school email marketing, massively valuable but really underrated. And actually, if you can, especially if you've got an email campaign that you deliver that's really engaging with helpful content, we found that amazingly valuable for our sales and clients. But almost people just want to drive the lead immediately, and I think maybe consumers, especially with AI, actually, maybe consumers want more help before they communicate. So it might be just looking at the content you create, which again, why is the podcast is interesting, I think.
Yeah, okay. Well, that is really interesting. I'm sure it'll be interesting for our audience too. I mean, why did you get into marketing in the first place?
So I did a degree in biology, not marketing. So I took a job in a training company that sort of ran team development and team building programs and training, which is interestingly why I think I was sort of got into work environment and how we work, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I was the most technical person in the office in the late 90s. So I got a bit interested in how you build websites. Our office then burnt down, and with it, all our paperwork. You used to post out brochures back in the late 90s. You'd post a brochure out or whatever, the marketing material. We lost all that. So the boss was like, well, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, actually, send people to this thing called a website. And you can download this thing called a PDF, but you just had to download the PDF viewer first. But we did that, and actually, it just started working really well, and we could respond much quicker to quotes. And although it was really stressful having this office fire, obviously, it sort of forced us to iterate, and then we saw the value in it. And then I was aware that we were suddenly getting inquiries that people we didn't know or we hadn't marketed to, and we realised that was through the website and through search engines that don't exist now. Well, I mean, Yahoo does, but there was a search engine called Dogpile, for example, back in the day, and we were getting these inquiries, and I was like, I just got into it that way because I think I was quite intrigued by data and the reason why. But yeah, I just got into it, and I've never got out. Essentially,
Wow. Yeah. And I'm guessing it's changed a lot over the years.
yeah, it's funny. It has changed. I think that suits my personality actually because I can't concentrate on one thing for that long. So I think weirdly that's probably why I've enjoyed it because there has been change. And actually, interestingly, SEO from 2014 to 2024 didn't change a lot. Actually, in hindsight, it had got a bit formulaic. And I was reflecting sort of over Christmas, I guess, New Year. I think that's why I've enjoyed it loads more the last year because AI is the impact's been huge and it's evolving again. And that's like the early days of SEO when you'd go to conferences and everything was changing all the time. And it was like, wow, this is exciting. How do we keep ahead of it? And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of change, but I think that suits my personality actually, weirdly.
Have you been able to apply your biology degree in any way?
I mean, I think in my first job interview, I said transferable skills, which is the classic line where you do a job application which has nothing to do with your degree. It has only in as much as we do work with quite a few healthcare clients, and there is quite a few rules and regs and unusual words, and it helps if your brain likes science or has that background. So actually, weirdly, it's probably been helpful about 8 times when the people we pitched me to have found out I did science and I'm not a scientist, but that's come up and that's helped. That's built that bit of the business because we've also got a sort of health arm that just does healthcare search marketing, which is actually, as a side note, really important because AI, and you might know this if you've ever searched for an illness you've got or something on AI, it can hallucinate sometimes, which is not answer correctly, essentially. And I'm quite passionate about that's a shame that happens, but I do think it's the healthcare and the pharma companies' responsibility to help get it right because they've got the content. The AI is just learning from somewhere and it's clearly learned from the wrong place, but that's because a lot of people won't share their content and their opinions, so it learns from the wrong place. So I think we're trying to sort of help some companies get more involved in that conversation so they say the right answers.
I mean, I'm part of a network at the moment. We talk about AI all the time. I mean, all of the time. We've even got a channel on WhatsApp that is just for AI. And we got into a conversation this week about, which is quite funny, about the fact that, some of us are using more than one AI platform. And like, does that mean that we're cheating on our, because some of us have named our AIs, so we feel like we're actually in relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean you're not uncommon, I think,
Mm.
with that. But again, like the early days of SEO, honestly, there was at least 10 or 12 search engines
Yeah.
and probably 8 or 9 different web browsers. And it's the same now. There's loads of different options, and probably in a few years' time, it will drop to two. And that's why they're throwing so much money at it, because if you can be the last two standing, you're laughing.
Well, I'm having a much deeper relationship with Claude at the moment than I am with ChatGPT, just out of interest.
Okay.
We'll see
Yeah,
where
I think that's not uncommon with Claude actually. I think it is built a bit more in that sort of way.
we talked before about the fact that you believe that you can have success in business whilst always also being purposeful. And I mean, that's interesting to me because I would class myself as a purpose driven entrepreneur. And conscious leadership is all about purpose and being human and treating people well and fairness and equity and all those sort of great things that go alongside purpose, I guess. What first inspired that mindset in you?
they say it takes a village, don't they, to raise a child? That's a sort of classic saying. I think if I look back, it's probably a combination of loads of different people. So obviously my parents and their approach, I guess, to work, life, community, and the world and the part we play in it. You pick that up a lot from your parents. I think my faith plays a big part. I think my experience of working for businesses before I set up Varn, like I said, that team development company was amazing because you saw different teams from board level to junior and how they interacted and the impact that managers had on a team, and that was I didn't realize at the time, but really helpful. I've got children. You just want to try and leave the world better than you found it, and I obviously the government plays a big part in that, but I do think it's a bit lazy just to rely on that, and I do think we should all just play a part in trying to make the world better in a way, in any way we can, however small the problem is. And I think that can be hard because sometimes you think there's no point because it's too small, but it's like voting, isn't it? We all vote and that all adds up to a bigger picture.
Out of interest, if you don't mind me asking, because this was definitely not on our list of questions, um, I would like to talk about your childhood experience because increasingly in the work that I'm doing, I I think that there is a correlation between the stability, security, and safety that you experience in childhood and your ability to show up in a way that is purposeful and loving actually in adulthood. You get love in childhood, you give love in adulthood. That's the thing I'm starting to see. And if you don't get love in childhood, it's harder to turn up as a caring, loving leader.
Yep.
But let's see if you prove or disprove my theory. Do you think that you received a good level of love, stability, security in your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was really fortunate, and that, in fact, my dad died a couple of years ago, and we were sort of reflecting on how actually we were just fortunate to have a dad and my mum still around, but they were both really caring. Not perfect because as a parent myself, none of us are perfect, are we? It's some weird stat I read the other day, which do check if anyone's listening to this on the internet, but it was something like you spend 80% of the time you'll ever spend with your children before they're 18 or 17 or 16 or something like that. So obviously, like you said, that impact you have as a parent at a young age is huge, isn't it? Because the older they get, rightly so, the less control you have, obviously. But yeah, my parents were stable, and actually, I think most importantly, were very clear that they didn't really care. They did care, but they how we did at school didn't really impact how they respected us or loved us. And I think that's a key thing. So we couldn't earn it. So therefore, you're perhaps more willing to take a risk because actually it's not a fail. It's you've learned and it doesn't impact your core support. I imagine there's a link, even because you just feel more settled.
Cracked it. That's it. I think that is ultimately it. You're more regulated and you've got a higher level of esteem, and therefore you're more secure in yourself. And so then the way you show up is more secure. But on that, actually, it's like you're lining these questions up for me. So I ran a workshop yesterday, and we were talking about it was actually called Managing Effective Relationships. But as part of the content of the workshop, we talked about what leads to healthy, thriving relationships. And out of that conversation came lack of judgment, acceptance, support, somebody that listens to you, equal relationship, there's no hierarchy, etc. And then on the flip side was they don't listen to you, they don't see you, they don't hear you, they're self-serving, etc., etc. But we also talked about the ability to embrace failure as being a really important part of being good at relationships. And the link between those things was like, if you can accept that we're just all human and we're imperfect and we get things wrong and like we're doing our best, and if we're motivated to do our best and we get things wrong and therefore we can probably apologize and we've got some humility, then we can be in relationship better with people. I mean, would you subscribe to that thinking?
Yeah, I think humility is key, isn't it? I think the challenge is sometimes with maybe I don't know with social media, but with the media communication at the moment is that sort of alpha personality, strong, physically amazing, done loads of stuff is key. But actually, I think probably on the balance, I'd say now I'm getting a bit older. that humility is key to, I mean, defining success is obviously a key metric. First, depends what you mean by success. If it's followers, then maybe it is being the alpha character. But I think, but in my mind, success, it would be based, being humble and realizing you're not perfect. I still remember being at a wedding actually, and the the guy talking, a friend of ours called Michael, actually was he's talking about actually you need to be, if you're in a relationship, each other's biggest fan. So and that'd be the same with friendships, I guess. But you've always got each other's back, but you're each other's fan, knowing that the other one will make mistakes, but you've got each other's backs and you're the one that's looking out for the other. And if you both can do that, then you might get through, navigate the challenges. Because actually, like in business, it's completely not true that most people go through the Hollywood relationship life cycle where it's like, oh, we all just settle off, into the sunset. But we're all trying to be perfect and not admit we've got weaknesses and we fail. As a manager as well, actually, because if you fake it too much, people think, oh, I can't be a manager because I don't do all those things and they never make any mistakes. And it's because we're too scared of admitting them. I remember when we were smaller, we plateaued as a company for quite a while. I think that was because I wasn't being open enough with the team and setting clear goals, because probably deep down, and I never said it was this publicly, but I was probably scared of not hitting them and looked like a failure because we had hit them, because I think it was my fault, which it could have been. But if you don't set targets, then you can't fail, right? So, and everyone thinks whatever you did was planned and success. But so I think it is, yeah, being open and being honest is key. It's just hard nowadays, perhaps, to do that with either it looking like a sort of vanity signaling to try and get social media followers, which I think does make it tricky, doesn't it?
Does. But I mean, let's talk about your leadership style because I think that that'd be quite useful. So another thing that came up yesterday was like, what's the
Mm.
opposite of a blame culture? If a blame
Hmm.
culture is about defensiveness and
Hmm.
protecting yourself and not admitting to mistakes and hiding things and all that's lovely stuff, then the opposite of that is probably a learning culture where you're like, well, we will make mistakes, so let's learn from it. And actually,
Hmm.
if that's not working, we just need to fix it. And let's not apportion blame. Let's just say, well, it's not working. So
Hmm.
we all have to take accountability in that type of setting. But let's do it in a way that we're always learning and growing, rather than looking at it through a lens of failing mistakes and blame. I'm just going to make an assumption here that you're more orientated towards a learning culture, but like, how do you tend to lead on a day-to-day basis?
Regarding if something goes a bit awry, I guess I think our approach would always be, rather than ask who when it's gone wrong, like, it's ask why. And I read it in a book. I can't remember the book, but the it's like if you ask why 5 times in a row, you normally get to the bottom of it. So I think ours is normally, if something goes wrong, it's like either someone's not been briefed properly, or we've not understood the brief, or the person's not had the training, or it's not in their wheelhouse of expertise or skill base or aptitude to do it. I think that, so I think my style is almost like, well, how can we help people to be the best version of themselves? But I think if I've certainly realised, weirdly as a side note, so if I've been doing Varn 15, 16 years, I've enjoyed it the last 3 years more than I ever have. And I've enjoyed it every year, but that's quite unusual, I think, if you've been doing it that long to not be a bit broken from it. And that is because I think now I'm in a seat and a role that energizes me, but uses my skills and experience. So what we've been trying to be more intentional with the team is the same thing. And actually, if there's mistakes, it's normally because people are in the wrong seat, or if there's blame, it's because they're out of their depth or bored. So it's like, actually, how can we look at everyone, get them in the right seat? And if you can have that honest and open conversation culture in the company, people are more open. They don't look at it as a fail. They just look at it as a learning. How can we train you, or how can we support you, or why did it happen, and what could be done about it, rather than, just blame. Obviously, if then the same thing happens 10 times in a row, and the person's had training, there's a point where people have to take responsibility for their role. But generally, again, as a manager, that's probably your fault because they're in the wrong role.
You can have a learning mindset and you can say to a team member or somebody that you're working alongside, actually, this isn't really working. So, how do we fix it? And normally, because these are sort of mature adults, they're like, okay, well, I need to take accountability for this. So, let's work on making it better and you improve it. Normally, of course, there's exceptions to that rule. At home, when your kids basically don't tidy their room for the 176th time, At what point are you like, right, what are we going to learn from this? There's two sides to it, isn't it? It's one about as the leader, you have to be open minded and curious and recognize that things change and you need to learn from things to make them better. But there's definitely something about an individual taking accountability,
Yeah.
or they're just not in the right job.
And that's fine if they, I mean, firstly, on the parenting front, we've all been there. So, but I think, again, with children, being able to say sorry as a parent is really important because the problem is if you then pretend you're perfect, they think they have to be a perfect parent or a perfect partner. And that puts pressures that doesn't need to be there. So it's good to admit, yeah, I think, if I'm honest, if you're not perfect, because they won't be either. So you don't want to set unattainable goals as the perfect parent because they'll never achieve them. I guess I think my belief is that everyone's really suited to a role, but it might not be at your company. Or if your company changes, it then might not work. So, but if they're not in the right role, they won't be happy. So there's people we've had that have been brilliant, work for us. You could see the energy start to go, the quality of work wasn't there. We tried different things. And we had one really great person, became a teacher, absolutely loved it. And actually, we supported them in the training so they could have days out to go and do work experience and see if they liked it. Because it's like life's too short. And but if you get people in the right role, you'll fly. If you get people that are stuck in the wrong role, therefore probably being a bit average, that will massively impact your business and that person. So it's not good for either. So I've really struggled in the past. I think as a team, we're probably a bit nice. So if we think something's not working out, we'll like hope beyond hope that it'll work out. But that's actually not doing anyone a favor because people know if they're struggling in their role. And actually, I think something like you spend 70% of your awake time traveling to work, doing work, or thinking about work. If you're not enjoying it or not doing what suits you, that's massively impacting your mental health and how your parent, weirdly, as a side note. So as I've got older, I've been like, actually, it's almost imperative or it's our responsibility that if we've employed someone and they're in the wrong seat or need pushing further because they can grow, then we need to be really intentional about that because we employed them. So it's our responsibility. And it might be it is to work somewhere else, like this example of the teacher. And that's the same with children, actually, because some of them really fly at school because it suits their brain type and some don't. And actually, that's unfortunate because they get marks on grades, but that they can be brilliant at doing other stuff outside of school, which is where their career is going to go. Those sort of profiling tools like Myers-Briggs or Belbin or things like that are helpful as a guide to understand that everyone's different. There's different strengths and different personalities, and that's fine. But you have to understand each other. And but yeah, sometimes it doesn't work out. But then it's important to help them find somewhere that can work out.
The strengths-based development or strengths-based leadership piece that, I feel very strongly about. But I think that when you are stressed as a leader, I mean, this is where I see the biggest mistakes happening. You feel under pressure and you're not regulated yourself as a leader, and then other people around you are making mistakes, or the work isn't quite going the way you would want it to. Often it can turn into more of a blame game rather than going, actually, maybe they're just not in the right job, or have we given them the right resources, or have I given them the right direction? And the focus is on the person who seems to be the problem, rather than the environment that you're setting up to enable them.
But all the managers in the wrong role because my roles have definitely evolved if I look, and there were some I was better at than others. Do you know what I mean? If you're in the wrong role or people in the wrong role, your job will be more stressful as a manager.
What part does faith play in all of this? Once again, that wasn't on our question sheet either. But you said faith earlier, so you're obviously comfortable talking about it. Do you think it has any bearing or influence on how you show up?
Well, yeah, it must do, right? Otherwise, it's not a faith; it's a fate. So, because if it didn't, if you, but I think that then comes back to that sort of leadership style of trying to support people, realizing there's more to people than just what you see above the sort of iceberg, and taking responsibility as a manager. But yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if it didn't, you're more saying you've got a faith for vanity or for marketing rather than actually having one. And everyone, in my mind, everyone believes in something. I mean, you either want to get more money, or it's all about your family, or it's about fame, or it's about being judged by other people and proving them wrong. So everyone makes decisions based on some narrative, right? So well, in my mind, so so then yeah, mine probably then comes back to a faith. Yeah, what does that mean, and the responsibility we have in the world to try and look after it as best we can, and the people within that.
Do you think that is your narrative? Do you think from a leadership perspective that is what the driving force behind your style is?
I don't know if there's one. I mean, because generally profit is a driver. I
Sure.
mean, it's like you can do all those nice things, but if you don't make a profit, people won't have a job.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
slightly then becomes a bit of, again, a vanity project, or just trying to sound cool. So I suppose, not gonna lie, profit is one of the drivers. It's not
Mm.
money's not a motivator, but in my mind, because I like analysing things, I think my brain's the same in the business. So if we're not hitting the correct profit, it's not because I want to make more money. It's more just means we're not running the business properly, or we're not billing properly, or we're not growing properly, or we've hired incorrectly. So that's a big driver, just because I think that's a good metric to have in cash flow. But then the other, it's multifaceted, isn't it? And then you've got the bit of, yeah, your responsibility as a leader and as a person. Um, so I suppose, yeah, that it does play a massive part.
What do you think your responsibility is as a leader?
To lead by example, and genuinely, I think to support people to be the best they can be. Because I've been fortunate that people have done that with me, whether it be my parent, my mum was brilliant, super brainy, really applied herself, but let us fly off in different directions that suited our brains. But you see it the same with the team. I remember our team spoke at, there's an SEO conference in Brighton, it's the world's biggest, and one of our teams spoke there, and it was a person who started as an intern. They just came for like a 2 month intern 8 years ago or something. And I was so proud and felt privileged to be part of that journey to see them grow. Part of my leadership style is, are we all developing and growing,
Yeah.
as well? So I haven't really answered that in a simple
No, I
sentence.
love it. I mean,
Natasha, but
you couldn't be more tick box when it comes to conscious leadership. So
oh,
I'm
okay.
like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted
There's
to hear.
probably other things I forgot to say, but it just comes back to being intentional, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Now tell me a little bit about your woodland hub.
Hmm.
So what were you doing in the forest or in the woodland? How
Yeah.
did you end up in a office space out
Hmm.
there, and what
Hmm.
difference does it make?
Right. So we bought a woods as part of our sort of drive to reduce or sort of manage our impact on the world, our sort of carbon footprint. So there was a woodland that was needed some management and was struggling. So we knew we could improve it. That would help with, carbon, etc., etc. So we had it anyway. So we were fortunate. And the answer won't be the same for everyone, actually. So I'm not suggesting people copy what we do, but we had it. And then lockdown happened, COVID happened, so we couldn't we obviously all work remotely. But I don't know if you remember, there was one Christmas where you could meet outside at a pub, and pubs all bought marquees to go outside, and everyone sat
Oh
outside
yeah,
freezing,
yeah, no, I do
having a
remember.
pint.
Yeah.
Staff, so we do like an annual strategy day, and we were like, oh, let's all get together and do it. Well, let's do it in the woods. So I literally tied a rope between two trees, massive tarpaulin, got a load of fire pits, got a TV from my house, and then we set up this. It looked like, if you can imagine, a really cheap version of Game of Thrones, and was probably a massive health and safety risk, but no one burnt themselves. And we ran the team there. It was just about, it was a cold day, but it was just about warm enough with all the fire. And the team was like, this is amazing. This is great. And I think then I got a bit excited. I was like, oh, should we put an office in the woods? That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? And everyone was like, yeah. And I was like, wee. So then ran along with it. And then quite a lot of money later, I was like, oh, probably should have thought about that. But I think I deep down knew it would be an interesting experiment. Going back to testing and failing, it's like, why not? If we can afford it. And actually, so that was version one. So we essentially then just used to work in the woods with the sort of temporary satellite Wi-Fi and these battery packs for power. And then that evolved into a more structured place as people came. And actually, a couple of weird things happened. One, it costs money, obviously, but we learned that, this is why I go back to my point about looking at staff or your office space as an investment, not a cost. We've reduced what we've had to spend on recruitment fees because people have heard about it and approached us, so that saved money. When we've measured productivity, the team seems to be more productive in the office, in the woods, sorry. And I think that might be just there's more oxygen. and generally meetings are walk-in meetings because you just wander around because it's quite large. Weirdly, and this was not the intention at all, it was more just like, let's do a fun experiment. That the aim was always, or my point was always that we have to be able to work. Like, it's not a team away day, which you have to do and are important, but we do actually need to deliver for the clients just in an unusual environment. So that was always a key metric. But yeah, we found it. It's just it's definitely paid for itself. It's a selling point, but also it's just a great place for the staff to come to. I'm not going to lie, some love it more than others. Some struggle with the compost toilets, and that's fine. And we've learned, it's evolved because we've learned how some people love or find it much easier to come into a structured environment. So if you go into an office, they like to know where they're going to sit, and that's just to do with how their brain works, and that's fine. But what used to be very much like you grab this box, and in it there was your screen, keyboard, mouse, laptop stand, mouse mat, whatever, and then you just go literally set up where you want within range of a Wi-Fi and power. But some people preferred to know where they were going to sit, so that just evolved how we set it up. So we've learned a lot from it.
Sounds like my perfect place to work.
Yeah, it is wonderful on a summer's day, or even well, when the sun is great. Even when it snowed, it's great. It's just a bit cold.
Well, actually, what's the practical reality of actually getting to the office when the weather isn't good?
Yeah, so we're genuinely, and this is why I go back to the point of not everyone could do this, and it isn't right for everyone to do this. It's like, what is your thing for your team that's
Yeah.
maybe unique, or what's your investment in your office? We're fortunate because it was only a mile and a half from our normal office, so
Okay.
it's not, there's a few things that went our way, as they
Yeah.
often do with these things,
Yeah.
where so access was actually okay. It's right near where I live, so it's easier to manage it and things like that. So we were fortunate. I mean, you could always get access to these things. It's just the cost. But we have been fortunate.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about VarnFest. So, what is it? Why did you set it up, and what difference does it make?
One thing I love about my job is just meeting loads of different business owners or managers from SMEs. So we work with SMEs through to FTSE 100 companies. I love the different meetings. I love going onto those industrial sites where there's loads of different warehouses, and you go in and they're doing really interesting things. And I think out of that, I realised that they all have similar challenges, whilst they're all unbelievably different. So we said a bit of a, it probably comes back to our culture, but we wanted to do an event that was helpful to our clients originally, actually. And I think someone floated the idea of what would an SEO conference, and just to be helpful, but we were like, no one really cares apart from people in the sector. And quite frankly, that's why our clients are paying us. They don't really want to know. So we're like, and I was like, yeah, but what I have found is that they all have similar stresses and strains. Why don't we run a genuinely not networking, a day of honest stories from people we know that have had successes and failures and are happy to talk about them. So it came out of that, just trying to support, because it can be a little bit lonely if you're running a team or a business. And again, social media, you don't really want to share. And if you do, everyone's like, oh, they're just doing that to get attention. So I think it was just like, actually, we just want to be helpful. And if we can help people move along the journey, because people do get really de-energized running teams and get a bit broken, and that impacts your life and your relationships. So I think we just wanted to try something, and we knew the woods was a bit unique. So we fortunate, my old boss Dan Collins, he was up for supporting us, and he'd done a lot of team development stuff, so that helped as well. And if I'm honest, the first year we ran it, a lot of our clients and people we work with came, like other business owners or agencies or whatever we partner with came, and they said this afterwards. It was quite funny. They're like, "Yeah, we only came because you asked us. We had no idea what the day was about because it seemed really weird. But because you had quite nice guys and it was in the woods and had food, we thought, why not?" And that was probably 4 years ago, maybe. I think it's 4 years. You've done it now, and it's just sort of snowballed a bit since then. And now people understand and they'll recommend other people to come along, and it sort of grown from there. But it's more just honest conversations. There's no vanity. It's just trying to be helpful, really. So it came from that, and then a lot of people that came along were like, "I'd love it if my team could come to this. Could they come as well?" And we were like, "Well, that's tricky because Natasha, from running a business, there's stuff you might say to someone else who ran a completely different business about it, but you want to say it to a junior person." So we were like, "Oh, that don't really work." But actually, there's loads of stuff I wish I'd known at 25 that no one told me, because again, if you think about how you manage, this might not be true for you, but a lot of people, I think, manage, especially if they haven't done management training, based on their first boss. A bit like parenting, and how you parent depends how your parents parented, blah blah blah. So we were like, well, actually, what would we have wished to know at 25 that could help change the narrative of how people manage and how people do support people at work in a way that we think is a good way. And actually, and again, from an impact point of view, we were like, look, if we can have 100 young people come along and be really helpful and honest, and they all manage 8 people when they're older, that actually impacts 800 people, and then how they manage. So we're like, oh, let's do it. And a lot of our clients are like, yeah, great, we'll help support it and send our grads along or junior team. And again, loads of people are happy to again chat about anything from how to manage up through to how to manage failure through to how to manage a LinkedIn account. That day we all love, because it's like, you see, we work with a few charities that work with young people from sort of disadvantaged backgrounds. And again, the point of that is to get them along, and they're literally sat next to someone who's a grad at a law firm, and just realize actually we're all people. We're all the same. I can do it if they can do it. So part of it, at least half are normally sort of donated places to get people along. But it just sort of snowballed, really. It's not at all about SEO. So, but it was more just part of our having an impact on the world, I think.
It sounds amazing. And just give me an example of a problem that somebody would solve at VarnFest.
An interesting thing is how long it takes to have an impact, actually. So I met with some people after the last one, and they ran a business. It was relatively large, but they restructured their senior team based on one of the talks where someone had just been honest about what they'd learned from not structuring a team in the way that suited them. Their wife said they'd been so much happier since they did their sort of restructure, and that was only because everyone was a bit honest at VarnFest about their structures and their challenges and what they had learned. So I suppose that's a real world impact. But it's more the learning. If you think about it, you probably don't really ever take time out. So I think the main point is if you can make busy people stop, and it's quite hard to get them to come along because they like haven't got time to stop. But actually, but then people give helpful advice or story. It's more stories than advice, but it makes you percolate about you and how you manage and what you do. And everyone from different sectors. We're quite intentional that it's not just agencies. We've got like people from more charity background as well as government, and it is amazing. But it is that more trying to help people just enjoy work more. I think that's our main focus. But we have had feedback about how it has helped people's business, which has been amazing.
I can imagine it must be massively helpful. I mean, that's the majority of my work, is creating safe spaces for honest conversation. Yeah. And with that in mind, I mean, as we wrap up the podcast today, I think, stories are everything. Have you got a story to finish on, in terms of your own journey and something that you've learnt about either your role as a leader or a parent or a business owner that could help other people maybe, find a little bit more comfort, peace, satisfaction in their life?
Well, two things possibly. One is imposter syndrome is a massive thing. And actually, one of my talks at VarnFest was how I nearly accidentally, well, I did make an offer. I don't know if you remember Maplin, it was an electronic shop from ages ago. But when it shut down, I've got a really boring interest in when companies go under, trying to work out why, just from like, what can we learn? So when they went under, I managed to find the contact of KPMG, who was handling the closure of Maplin, messaged them. They said, oh, I'm interested in buying Maplin. And they sent me all the paperwork for it. And we ended up putting an offer in. It was it sort of snowballed rather quickly. Anyway, my main learning was everyone on the process was slightly wigging it, because there's no way I should have got that far down the line. And actually, sometimes, and I had a massive, again, goes back to this when our company plattered a bit. I think I had a bit of imposter syndrome. It's like, well, I'm not quite sure how we've got this success. I don't think it's anything to do with me. So I'm not going to risk growing much more because it might just be fluke and I don't want to risk it. And I did a talk at VarnFest about that, actually. And I think for me, the message is most people feel like that, actually. But if you can work out where your strengths and weaknesses are and what you enjoy doing, and realize that a lot of people in business are slightly winging it. And the ones that have had success and the ones that haven't, it's quite a fine line between the two. Some people at the ends of either that are genuinely amazingly high performing and genuinely terrible. But there's a lot in the middle where I know a company that are brilliant that work in auto electrics. They do a great job, but it's an industry that is shrinking in size. They've done well, But to be fair, if they were in an industry like this, their business would be huge. But they enjoy it, and it's what they enjoy doing. It's just the industry they're in. So I think mine would be just realise that most people are slightly winging it, and just lean into that, and get some help and work out the bits that you're good at. I mean, one thing I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about at the moment is how all the data or whatever we talk about in government is all negative about business, about how it's struggling and blah blah. Which is, I'm not saying isn't true, but I do worry because if that's all you hear and you're a young person thinking about getting into business, you're thinking why? Because it looks like no fun. It doesn't need to be. Honestly, like I said earlier, the last 3 years have been the most fun in the last 16, and I've genuinely enjoyed the 13 years before that. I think it's only because, and this was a bit by fluke, I'm not gonna lie. I I'm doing a role that suits me and my skills and my personality. So I would lean into the fact that everyone's slightly winging it, and then try and work out where your skills are and really work hard.
Amazing. Well, that's been an inspiration to me. I've learnt from you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your honesty. I think that's just the most important thing
Yeah,
when it comes to sharing with, the audience, because that's what we really learn from, isn't it?
yeah, no,
Um,
agreed.
and where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they want to hear more about what you do?
Yeah, well, to be fair, you go on the search engine or on AI search actually, and just search for Varn or VarnFest. So it's VARN for November, or search my name, Tom Vaughton, or Varn on LinkedIn. You'll find us. We're all over the place. But yeah, if anyone wants a random chat, happy to happy to chat. If you want to chat about search, also happy to chat about that. But either way is fine.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, not at all. Good to see you.